How's it going, everyone? It's Avi from Show 1000 Day. It's February 12th, 2021, and today we're going to focus on the major Midwest, Northeast, and Southeast snowstorm that's going to impact us next week. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin our first thing and look at the GFS model 78 hours from now. It's forecast one, and you see it's forecasting a large area of snow extending from Texas all the way to the Mississippi River Valley, right around Missouri and Illinois, as is a pretty large trough. Well, I wouldn't say a large trough, but it's packing a lot of moisture behind it, and it's at least a powerful enough trough to bring a lot of moisture all throughout the United States. And this will originate from the Pacific Northwest, and not only will it pack a lot of moisture and precipitation, it's also going to pack a lot of cold air behind it. And what gives evidence of this is how low how the lower elevations are of Washington and Oregon are getting snow from this, and Seattle's forecasted to get a decent amount of snow from this. Not a ton of snow, obviously not like the higher elevations, but the fact that Seattle is getting at least any sort of snowfall accumulation really shows how much cold air is behind it, because it's not every day you see Seattle get accumulating snowfall, as typically the Pacific Ocean water is a little bit too warm to keeps the temperature at a constant temperature throughout the winter, that keeps it from ever going below freezing enough or much to have accumulating snowfall right around Seattle. But in this case, low pressure seems to be packing so much cold air. We're going to see some snow in Seattle, and it's going to set the stage for just a lot of unstable air in the Midwest. And we're going to see a lot of convergence as a result of this, a lot of convergence of the air molecules right around this trough. And this storm will evolve into a mid-latitude cyclone, and you see that it will, and while it doesn't rapidly intensify, it's still going to maintain a lot of its strength, and it will dump a lot of snow for millions of people across the United States. And we could also have a threat of ice. The model has been agreeing with this. However, there are definitely some slight differences. Let's take a look at the European model right now, the high resolution European model. And if we compare the forecast models 96 hours from now, which is approximately 4 days from now. So if we take a look at what the European model is saying, they're almost at the same location. We do have a little bit more precipitation towards the northeast based off what the GFS model is saying, and the GFS model is leaning towards bringing this storm a little bit faster up northward, but for the most part they're fairly similar in terms of their tracking. But it gets even more interesting later, because it seems like the GFS is leaning towards more of an eastward track, which would bring more snow along the coast, while the European, if we compare the two 108 hours from now, you're going to see that the European is a little bit more on the westward track, where it keeps at the center of circulation much more inland. And while the European eventually does form a new low pressure system just off the coast of the northeast, the fact that the European model is so lenient on having this area of low pressure systems be the center of attention for a lot of this convergence really shows that they're more leaning towards bringing that more westward track, which would mean less snow for a lot of the East Coast. However, there's still that big chance of freezing rain and ice, which could just be devastating for a lot of people, and even more, and could cause even more havoc than snow, since ice has a lot less friction with it. Once the tires move over the ice will melt and much easier, and as a result the tires will lose a lot of friction with the road surface, and that'll create just treacherous driving conditions, even if the ice accumulation is very small, as I'd rather have 10 inches of snow on the road than a quarter of an inch of ice. That's how bad ice is. So the fact that both the European model and the GFS model are leaning towards bringing a freezing rain threat throughout the mid-Atlantic is a huge worry because that could just cause extensive damage and just catastrophic damage throughout the East Coast. Could cause a lot of power outages. That's definitely a possibility when we're talking about a freezing rain threat. And based off of what the GFS model is saying, this would be a long duration freezing rain event because you see this storm is very broad and its precipitation extends for a very long area. So there's going to be some areas where for several days are going to be under freezing rain threat, and that will be devastating. And not to mention the snow will be to the northwest of it, which will also cause a lot of havoc. So we need to definitely keep a close eye on that. And depending on how broad the storm is, it really all depends on whether or not there's going to be a lot of convergence in this area of the United States, because there is a smaller low pressure system moving up northward, and there's that possibility that this low pressure system right off the northeast coast, the first one that's expected to move through, will be close enough to this low pressure system to the point where the atmosphere overall in the eastern half of the United States, the atmosphere will have a very low pressure. So it induces a lot more broader storms and a lot more broader a much more broader radar where we see a lot more precipitation, which would extend the snowfall accumulation threat. And it really all depends on how fast these storms move, because the GFS is expecting this to move a little bit faster, which allows it to meet up with this low pressure system because it's moving a little bit faster, while the European is taking the more slower route, which would limit the how broad this storm is overall. But there's still that chance that this storm extends into just one big storm rather than two separate storms. But based off of but the good news is that based off of what both the computer models are saying, there's pretty high confidence that there's this scenario is at least going to be right around the ballpark in terms of what to expect out the East Coast, where we're going to see a low pressure system move through the East Coast, and we're going to see a lot of snow as well, and a lot of freezing rain as well throughout the Northeast. And the European model agrees with it for the most part. It isn't one of those scenarios where they're entirely different or they're to the point where there's a lot more uncertainty. They're fairly similar for the most part, which is definitely good news. Now, for the snowfall accumulation for the European model, let's take a look a little bit further ahead when all the snowfall has fallen, and you see that there's a large area of over 6 inches throughout the Northeast, 6 or 12 inches for the most part. All throughout the Northeast, this extends to Maine, this extends to a lot of New England, upstate New York, and even as far south as Oklahoma and Texas could get involved in over 6 to 12 inches of snow. And even in the areas not in the purple, you're still experiencing a good area of 3 to 6 inches. And throughout Illinois, Indiana, and Missouri, it's pretty much on the higher end, and you're borderline in that 6 to 12 inch category in terms of snowfall. So you guys definitely don't want to put your guard down because it's going to be less than 6 inches. If we take a look at the GFS model, however, since the GFS is a little bit more lenient on bringing a little bit more of a stronger storm and a little bit more of a broader area of precipitation, it's definitely expecting a lot more snow than the European. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but a noticeable amount of snow more than the European model, where there's a much larger area of 6 to 12 inches. And this goes further south to where it's affecting New York City, it's affecting Philadelphia, and it's affecting a lot of the Interstate 95 corridor cities, while the European model isn't as lenient as bringing that snowfall as far south as the GFS model, as it expects it, like I said, there's going to be as it doesn't expect a low pressure system to move very far to the east to allow that cold air to penetrate the East Coast. So as a result, since the low pressure system, since all the convergent and warm energy will be closer to the coast and will be further westward, that means that will change a lot of that potential snow into rain, or at least freezing rain, as that will definitely be the issue, and that's the biggest fear right now for a lot of East Coast right around Philadelphia, Washington D.C., and extending all throughout Virginia, where we could see just a very bad freezing rain threat. So, what causes freezing rain is pretty much the intrusion of warm air in the mid levels of the atmosphere, where obviously all precipitation, whether it's rain or snow or freezing rain, it all condenses as snowflakes. However, during a freezing rain threat, there's a intrusion of warm air in the mid levels of the atmosphere that puts the temperatures well above freezing, and we see that the snow eventually changes over to rain. However, what really creates the freezing rain is the cooler than freezing temperatures along the surface, where the rain accumulates, but since the temperature is below freezing, obviously the rain doesn't have enough time during a freezing rain threat to freeze into sleet. Where during a sleet event, there's a lot less warm air intrusion, but during a freezing rain threat, it has very little time to freeze in the air to make it just a sleet threat. So instead, it freezes on the ground, which creates that freezing rain. And it seems like in this scenario, the computer models are detecting that there's going to be a lot of warm air intrusion as a result of the Gulf Stream bringing a lot of that warm air in the mid levels of the atmosphere to create a heavy freezing rain threat. So we definitely need to keep a close eye on this, because this definitely could be devastating. However, I'd say at this point, the confidence for a major snowstorm along the East Coast is very high at this point, and you guys definitely need to be aware of this from the Midwest to the Southeast, where you could definitely experience some snow as well, all the way to the Northeast, where it could be just a very, very bad scenario for a lot of you guys. Where if the GFS model were correct, you could see snow that you typically wouldn't see in places such as Louisiana and Houston and Oklahoma. So we need to keep in mind in it. And like I said, the factors that will change or alter the forecast really all depends on how the ridges build up in the United States. If this Bermuda Ridge is a little bit, let me show you guys a map. If this Bermuda Ridge is a little bit stronger and it's a little bit further to the west, and that would force that storm a little bit to take that turn further northward a little bit earlier, and that'll intrude a lot, and that'll bring a lot of warm air intrusion along the coast, which would mean less snow along the coast and more snow along the Midwest, and potentially more unstable air thanks to a more pronounced zip in the jet stream. That would be as a result of a stronger ridge in the southeast. However, if the ridge is a little weaker, if it's a little bit further to the east, then that would mean that there's more likely a chance that a lot of the East Coast will experience a lot more snow, since the storm won't move as fast to the north as a scenario where the ridge is closer to the coast. So we need to keep in mind of this ridge, that's this Bermuda Ridge that's currently over the Western Atlantic, and also how much cold air will be behind it, because that'll definitely determine how strong this ends up being. However, based off what both the computer models are forecasting, it seems like it's gonna be right around this scenario where we're gonna see some sort of unstable air. It's unlikely that the unstable air will just completely disappear or won't be enough to bring a snowstorm, because it seems likely we're gonna see at least some sort of snowstorm. So just be aware of that throughout the Midwest and the East Coast. However, where exactly it affects, it remains to be seen. But I think for the most part, it's likely that the East Coast will definitely get affected by this. But remember, any small differences in the forecast can make a big difference in your specific location. So stay tuned for more updates, because I promise you guys I'll give you more reliable forecasts once we get more confidence regarding this snowstorm. And yeah, we just need to keep close on this, because this could potentially be devastating. Just a very heavy freezing rain threat, potentially just very heavy snow as well. Really all depends on how much unstable air there is in this ridge. Let me zoom out a little bit to show you guys, to exemplify this point a little bit more. you see this ridge in the eastern half, because if this ridge is a little bit closer, the low pressure will move northward further earlier and would bring a lot more warm air to prevent that snow from impacting the east coast. So it's going to be a close call where that rain snow line meets up, and we just need to stay tuned as the computer models continue to shift their forecasts day in and day out, as that'll be definitely important in making a more reliable forecast. But let's take a look at the future radar. So you see that the snow extends to the Midwest by Saturday, and then by early Sunday, it should be throughout the Midwest. And in terms of the timing of this, the low pressure should reach the Northeast right around Tuesday, where Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday in the morning, it should be the worst for a lot of you guys. And then this should completely move out by Wednesday. And for a lot of the Southeast, it should be a late Monday threat. And throughout Monday, this should affect Texas and Mississippi and Louisiana, those states. And then Tuesday, it will extend to the Northeast. So keep that in mind regarding the timing of this storm. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. And I hope you guys have a good day.